is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
I belong to you.
I belong to
you. Do just what you want. You're the one I trust.
Puts it into an area. Keo, Zamora!
And I'll always be around when you need some love and baby. No one else.
Yeah. Put you down.
Yes, guys, I am Si. This is Ace Podcast Nation, and wasn't it nice to hear that song again? It's been a very long time. Couldn't play the other one because the EFL copyrighted all of them 70-odd videos. The big spoil sports. But I'm delighted to be back on the channel, and it's a Monday, which is normally a members-only show. But we got a little treat as the return of the legend. He's a former Middlesbrough striker, former Cardiff City striker, and, of course, Davy Jones's favourite son, Mr. Andy Campbell. How the devil are you?
Evening, mate. Yeah, all good, yeah. Yeah, it's been... That was a bit strange watching that. It brought back some very good memories. Brought back some of our ex-guests on the show as well, which is, lovely. Good times.
Yeah, mate, it was wicked. It's like... funny, it's been a bit of a weird week because obviously I spoke to you last week and we sorted it out and stuff. And then I went to some boxing up in Abergavenny on Saturday night to support my mate. And I got recognised by like 2 or 3 people, which was so surreal for me because that's not something that I'm used to. And then I bumped into like a few people who I knew from doing shows with. And about 4 or 5 people asked me about you. And like, oh, is he coming back? When's he on? When's he on? And it was really surreal how it sort of all just coincidentally happened because I think last week
all fell into place.
Yeah, last week I was doing the Cardiff show and people were asking about you and Kev and stuff. And it's nice, mate. I really enjoyed listening to that little intro there. So we'll talk about you for a bit and then we'll talk a bit of football as is tradition. But obviously you left us to try yourself back in football, mate, which wasn't the plan.
No.
Because I remember we had a conversation not long before you sort of went to Middlesbrough Ladies that you weren't really interested in getting back into football in that sort of shape of things. And we were obviously doing quite well with the podcast and stuff. And we'd just started talking about like a live show and all this stuff. And then about a day or 2 later, a phone call. And there we are, history, as it were. But talk to me a bit about manager of Middlesbrough Ladies. Obviously, a special club for you, and the ladies side of it. You obviously have got a big affinity to women's football and links within that setup as well. Like how did it come about? How did it go? What was it like at first? Talk to me.
It all came out of the blue. If I'm all honest, it was all during one of our shows on a Monday night. My phone was ringing constantly throughout. Everyone who's a show regular knows my connection wasn't great at the best of times. Mm-hmm. But it was brutal that night because if your phone just kept ringing, it was the chairman of Middlesbrough Women who offered me an opportunity. And to be fair, it was too much of an opportunity to turn down. I know I didn't really want to get back into football. It was never anything on my agenda. It was, I think I'd wore the T-shirt, I'd been through the football mill and done enough that I didn't really need to probably ruin my reputation and get involved in anything. But this was an opportunity where I thought I could make a difference. I was there just under 2 years. Made a huge difference, I believe, in the area for women's football, for girls in the area, give people opportunities, help put the club on the map a little bit, continue the great work which has been done previously by previous managers and chairwomen, chairmen, etc. But everything sometimes always comes to an end, and I think probably a couple of weeks before that, the decision was for me to step away. That it was probably coming. It was probably the right time. I think I've said before on here that previously I've overstayed my welcome as a manager. That I probably should have gone out at the right time, and this time was the right time. So I've got no regrets why I went when I went. It was perfect timing. Listen, I'd have loved to have been more successful. I'd have loved to achieve the targets that I set myself, but unfortunately in football, you're fighting against other managers, other teams, other players, your own players sometimes, and it just didn't work out. You know, I've got huge love for the club. My daughter still plays for the club, so my affiliation's not gonna stop. I'll continue to help the club as much as I can, and need to. But for me, I think football management now. I think I retired too late in football. I believe I've got 41, 42. I think as a manager now, I think I'm finally done.
I think, in fairness, I think that was probably the only, just from speaking to you previously, I think that was the only job you would have taken, was the Middlesbrough ladies job. And I think from the outside, at least looking in, it seemed like not only were you doing all right on the pitch, I felt like you could see a progression in the results and things. You know, it wasn't like an instant thing. There was progression. The performances seemed to get better. The togetherness of the group seemed really good as well, again, from the outside. But also, I felt it looked like you were putting things in place off the field, you know, to move things on and develop the club. Do you feel like you left the team and the club in a better situation than when you went in?
I personally think I left them in a miles better position than when I took over, on and off the pitch. I think people will look a little bit at results and league tables, and probably rightly so, because managers are judged on those, and which I do think is a little bit unfair, because it was a club who was in a transition and needed a bit of stability. I gave them that. I give them an opportunity to for young players to platform their football. You know, obviously I've still got links with women's football because of my role at work with T6 Academy, and I've still got all the girls there who still are cracking footballers, lovely people. So they're obviously still within the thing. So I'd still keep my eye in with them and still have good things to say about all those footballers and some of the players that played with me previously at Middlesbrough. But I think I left them in a better position on and off the pitch. You know, with the links that they've got now with the men's team and stuff on and off the pitch is fantastic, and it gives the local girls in here, around here. You know what I mean? My daughter's 7 years old. You know what I mean? So in 9 years' time, 10 years' time, hopefully she'll get an opportunity to wear that red shirt at the Riverside playing for Middlesbrough women. That would be the ultimate dream, you know. You know what I mean? All my kids so far, apart from the youngest one who's so far plays football, and you know what I mean. It's a game for everybody, men and women, boys and girls, and I know how talented girls can be at football, and I've worked with a lot of them, and I'm talking elite. You know what I mean? These girls are at the minute elite, and they can get even better.
Yeah, I think it's clear for anyone to see from, you know, at the professional top level of women's football now compared to 10 years ago. The game has moved on massively. It's you know, the standard, everything, but not just the standard of the football, but the standard of, you know, how it's run off the field as well. I think it's clear to see. And also I think, like, I see still, because Cardiff Council changed the rules a few years ago whereby the girls, once it got to high school age, they weren't allowed to play with the boys anymore. Yeah. But quite often, I say once or twice a season, you do come up against a team who's got like one girl in the side because they're too good for the girls teams in the area, because there's not as many girls teams. And I think, I don't know what it's like up by you, but for me in Cardiff, the biggest thing we have to do is get more girls teams at grassroots level, like parks level, for girls to be able to play. Because if you're going to stop them playing boys football at, you know, 11, 12, then you've got to be able to give them teams that are good enough for those players to play.
No,
You can't.
100%, Si, and I think people need educating as well. You know what I mean? I think it's 2023 now. You know, like let's be perfectly honest. Girls can't do this, girls can't do that, women can't do this, women can't do that. You know, I'm a man who when I played football, women's football wasn't relevant at the time. When I played, it wasn't as famous as it is now. There wasn't England nationals who were on the TV, you know what I mean, thrown all over social media, which wasn't apparent back then. And you know what I mean, now, you know what I mean, the women are absolute superstars. You know, they're inspirational for other people. That's every sport. You know what I mean? I just in the local area to, like, you know what I mean, this week Savannah Marshall goes and wins the, you know what I mean, is world champion of boxing from the Middlesbrough area. You know what I mean? So having these local heroes as females for my kids alone, for everyone else's kids in the area, it's absolutely fantastic, and long may it continue. You know, because forget those days about just being men or boys being footballers and having opportunities. You know, I've been there. I was lucky enough to have the opportunity as a footballer myself, and hopefully my kids, other people's kids in the area, in the country, in the world can follow suit and have those opportunities as well.
Absolutely, mate. And I think, as is tradition, we'll just quickly go to some of the comments, and there's lots of welcome backs from people. Obviously, Reese says, "Andy, doesn't it just feel right to be back?" Question mark. What else we got? Rob Boyle says, "All is right with the world. God, I've missed your beautiful face, Andy." But,
just less
Reece,
hair. That's just less hair. I've got a browner face, but less hair.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Reese has got a question though. He says, "What are the challenges that most people wouldn't be aware of when managing in women's football? Recruitment must be difficult."
Yeah, it's. Do you know what? Girls and women are very loyal. Extremely loyal. Trying to persuade them to leave their friends, teammates, teams is very difficult. Obviously, the obvious, as a man going into a changing room and setting my standards out and being able to talk to them at certain times. You know what I mean? You've got the challenges of girls getting ready and me being able to get my point across, and me being able to spend enough time in the changing room working on tactics and things. You know what I mean? We got things very right, and we worked on those kind of things. And but yeah, there's a lot of challenges, but I think people forget there's challenges across the board in football in general, men and women. You know, so I think when they just think that there's more challenges in women's football, you know, I think it's only a matter of time until there's a woman manager and coach within the men's game. You know, I think it's a must, and it's going to happen soon. I think there'll be a lot of scrutiny and a lot of pressure on that female, unfortunately, but that's just the way of the world. You know, you've had female owners, you've got female coach now gone into Brentford, from Leicester City Women. You know, obviously you've got things just creeping in slowly and surely, and it's great for the game. You know what I mean? Because I've come across some unbelievable coaches in the last 2 years of my football career. So the future's certainly bright.
Indeed, mate. And I think look, when that women's manager does eventually come in, she can't be any worse than Frank Lampard was for Chelsea last year. So there we go. Reece did he clarified. He said he meant more as a case of being part-time training. There's not so much money that can go out and buy a player and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, of course. Listen, like, yeah, you know, none of the players were paid at all. Along with myself, not paid at all. Coaching staff not paid at all. We did it all voluntary. We worked extremely hard. We trained Tuesday, Thursday, played on a Sunday. Our Sunday could be leave at 7 o'clock in the morning, get back at 9, 10 o'clock at night. So it's a huge commitment from the players, from the staff. I had a 7-8 squad of my staff who followed me all the way through. So I can't thank everybody enough for what they did for me and the effort that they put in for me. And listen, they were all disappointed when I left. But listen, it's football. It's part of life. You sometimes you succeed in life in certain things, and sometimes you fail in certain things that you're trying to do and want to do better. And unfortunately for me, that I just didn't achieve what I wanted to achieve.
Yeah, and I think, unfortunately, I think one of the things in football generally, more so in women's football, but also in the lower parts of men's football as well, is if you've got coaching staff and managers who are giving up almost like a full-time job's worth of hours per week, and then you've got players who are training multiple times a week and then traveling to games, they've got to be paid for their time. we have to find a way to cover that, because, like you say, it's a massive commitment. Like, I know how much commitment it is just coaching a kid, like a teenager's grassroots team, let alone a team, like Middlesbrough is a big club. It's very, very difficult, and I think to have that amount of money, that lack of money, I think is a problem. But like you say, it's commitment, and obviously those girls are looking to progress with Middlesbrough and with you, but also hoping for a chance to get seen by some of the teams who are paying and maybe playing at a higher level.
Listen, it's football, and if any manager who wants to get in the game is in men and women who thinks that players aren't putting themselves in the shop window every time that they cross that white line. You know what I mean? Every player, I did it as a player myself, that every time you went there, yes, you wanted to play for your club, you love your club, but you're there to impress everybody else. You're there because who knows what's around the corner. The managers might not like you. You know what I mean? I've had that in the past with myself, and every time you're in the shop window, and you need to make sure that you give as good as what you get. It's a ruthless industry, and so many times in my 44 years of my life, I've found out probably my detriment that football is absolutely ruthless.
Yeah, it's brutal, mate. It is brutal. What sort of manager were you? Were you like quite calm, collected? Were you an emotional manager?
Yeah. I kicked every ball. I headed every ball. I shouted at everybody. But you know what? I cared, and I wanted the best for the football club, and I made sure that that everybody knew the importance of wearing that badge. Because for me, it doesn't matter about anything else. When you cross that white line, it doesn't matter who you're playing with, who your manager is, who's watching you in the stand. If you play for that badge, then you're onto a winner. You know what I mean? You run through a brick wall. I was very lucky. Listen, I grew up playing for the club that I dreamt of playing for at Middlesbrough, and I would have run through a brick wall for every single fan that came to watch me. But then things didn't last forever. I go to Cardiff, and you find a different love, but you still have the same mindset, and you still have the same things. You know what I mean? My affiliation with Cardiff is ultimately strong because my daughter was born there. I had a really good life there, and met some unbelievable people there. And same thing. You know what I mean? I didn't want to leave there, but something else happened, and you go on again. And for me, you have to have that mentality and that love for a club. There's some players fortunate enough to stay at one club all their career, but some people have to move around like journeymen and go from club to club to club. It doesn't mean they don't care. It's just it's sometimes circumstances that people don't see probably the bigger picture. Yeah.
What about during your time as manager of Middlesbrough? Was there a particular game where you had to get the hairdryer out after the game, or where you were sort of more angry?
There was one. There was one in my first season. We played Hull City at home. She might be watching actually, and I'll tell the story. So we played Hull City at home. We were getting beat 1-0 by Hull, and it was a 6-pointer. It was probably a 9-pointer. It was that big of a game. We couldn't afford to lose, or we probably would have been relegated the following week. And we were getting beat 1-0 by Hull, and I came in and I knew what I was going to do. I knew what I was going to say. So as the door shut, I just let rip. And as I let rip, I scared the goalkeeper, who was my captain at the time, Rosie Todd. She jumped off a chair, bless her. And I think I frightened her to death. We went out second half. We won 2-1. I'm not taking credit for that, by the way. The girls are the players who put the work in, put the effort in. There was just a moment that I needed to get a point across that wasn't acceptable. That players were underperforming. They weren't playing for the club. They weren't playing for me. They weren't playing for themselves. And that's not acceptable at times. That sometimes all you expect is people to try and people to run through a brick wall and play for the team and play for the badge. And if that's not happening, then sometimes you need to be told. I've had managers throw teacups and boots and pin you up against the wall, and unfortunately you've got to take it because it's just football and life. And whatever happens in the changing room should normally stay in the changing room.
Yeah, and I think emotions can run high in the 90 minutes, can't they? And then it's got to be sort of left there at the end of it. But they can sometimes be tricky, can't it? I think it's interesting because one of the hardest things, I think, if you're a good coach or a good manager at absolutely any level, is you've got a squad of say 20, 25, whatever it may be, 18 upward, and you've got all these different personalities. And obviously, years ago, when you were probably coming through as a teenager, you were kind of all treated as the same. This is what we're doing, do it. Whereas I think now generally speaking, most coaches will try and manage those personalities, and maybe someone responds to being shouted at, someone else needs a bit more positive reinforcement. How tricky is that for you? I know you've got obviously teaching experience as well as the football experience.
Listen, I think within my role, that was probably one of the most difficult things. You see some of the big clubs in the world, men and women, they have that many coaches that they can go and speak to them individually. Some can get a kick to the backside, somebody can have their arm rounds. Just be serious. I think you need to mix it up very, 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 very carefully. But you need the staff to be able to do that. You can't just you can't be one person doing it on your own. It doesn't work. It's too much of a job with a 16-player squad, 20-player squad, 25. It's impossible. You know what I mean? To try and keep a full squad of players happy with one person in charge is just a disaster.
Indeed. I got a couple of questions for you. As I say, as is tradition, they're coming in thick and fast. Matthew on YouTube says, at that level, Middlesbrough ladies, is there any money involved at all? You said none of the players got paid. If not, what are the incentives, or what are the incentives for the women at that level, other than playing under a legend like yourself?
Thanks, Matthew. Love that. None of our players. Well, we played against Newcastle United. Their players got paid good salaries. Leeds United players got paid even. Some other teams got. You know what I mean? I think the plan for Middlesbrough this year, now this season in the same league what they're in, they're going to be getting paid. So it's got to be right. There's got to be a financial plan in place for that to happen, and for Middlesbrough to progress and to get where they want to be, they had to pay the players. And for the teams like Newcastle got promoted, the only way to get the best players and to get promoted and get the right plan to move forward, you have to pay your players and pay your staff and make it as professional and maybe full time as quick as you possibly can.
Yeah, funny you mentioned Newcastle. I'm sure you've been following her career, but obviously, and regular viewers of the channel, Charlotte Potts, who was a guest on AC Footy Show, and she's been on the channel a few times since then as well. Obviously, she went and she did a bit of the rounds. She went out to Switzerland and played on loan. Really worked hard at her game, both within training and on the away from it as well, in the gym and stuff like that. And she's reaping the rewards of that real hard work ethic that she's got, as well as the talent. Playing for Newcastle now, which I believe is her hometown club, isn't it? And they got promoted, and she's done quite well for herself since we spoke to her. Oh, he's disappeared.
I tried to sign her before she signed for Newcastle. I was this close to doing it and getting it across the line. And then she left and signed for Newcastle, which, listen, I couldn't compete. No. And yeah, good luck to her. Played against her a couple of times this season, and Rolls Royce, you know what I mean, stood out in the league. You know what I mean, for me, probably one of, if not the best player in the league, you know what I mean, by a country mile. But you know what I mean, she deserves to be playing higher, should be playing higher, and she's going to get an opportunity next season to play at that higher level. And you know what I mean, she was a great guest, loads of honesty. Not had an easy ride, by the way, as a female, for where she wanted to be, where she currently is or currently was. So yeah, a real good opportunity for her now.
What always impresses me is her. Every time I speak to her, I get on with her really well, and we had a little talk about maybe doing something regular as well, because we get on really well. But also, what impresses me is every single post that you see on her Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, it's all her just training, working. Everything is just about where she wants to be and putting the effort in to get there, going that extra mile. Do you think she will get to the top level of women's football? I know that's putting you on the spot a little bit, but just from what you've seen as a player, that
Newcastle United will be in the WSL in the next 2 or 3 seasons, 100%, because they've got the right model, they've got the finances in place, and they've got some very, very, very good footballers. She's, for me, like I say, she stand out in their team. I'm not sure if that's the plan for the club moving forward. But listen, any football manager in the right mind would want Charlotte Potts in their team, 100%.
Is the Newcastle women's team linked to Newcastle United men's side?
Yeah, from last season. They got the last year. They played at St James's. they'd use a training ground. They'd use their finances, I believe, as well. So
Well, they got a bottomless pit of money, mate. With the
you know, what I mean, so
owners now.
and they've got an opportunity. Listen, like let's be honest, the Newcastle women have probably got a better chance to win the WSL than the men have got to win the Premier League, because it's that hard to win. It's a holy grail, you know what I mean? So the women could be more successful in the short term than the men. Maybe you just never know.
Yeah, and I think there's obviously not as many women's teams will have that financial backing as well.
No way.
So,
Not a chance. Yeah.
Will says, how do you think male players would react to having a female manager in the men's game? Would she get the backing of the dressing room?
If you asked me 20 years ago, I'd probably laughed at that question, because it was never, it wouldn't have even been spoke about. And that's not me being disrespectful, by the way. That's just how football was, and the way the world was. Now, I think players are very, very fickle in terms of who's standing in front of them and who's telling them what to do. If the ideas are good and the ideas work, then players will have the respect for whoever's telling them what to do. Doesn't matter for me if they're female, male, or an alien. You know what I mean? Players just want to be successful. You know what I mean? That if there's a female version of Pep and can absolutely evolve football, then every single player will want to play for her. It's just the life of being a footballer. You know that you know what I mean. It's no secret that me and Dave Jones didn't see eye to eye. You know what I mean? When Dave Jones first stood in front of me, that I knew that moment that me and him weren't gonna get on, because we didn't look at each other within the right manner. We didn't have respect for each other from day one, and it was a recipe for disaster. And it's made this show great, but it's also it's also looked after my social media as well.
Yeah. Do you know, it's funny, like, obviously we spoke to you a few times about it at different points. And obviously I asked Kev about his experiences with Dave Jones, and his is the opposite. Like he played his best stuff under Dave Jones and was very successful, got on with him, blah, blah, blah. And then I had Ken Phillips in Eat Sleep Media in the studio to talk about his career covering, you know, sport and football, and particularly sort of Cardiff, and he was sharing different stories. And obviously he dealt with Dave Jones quite a lot in terms of, I think he was at one point, some of them were banned from the stadium and stuff like that. He did say he was very difficult to choose. And funny enough, he said he still phones him, and Dave can be quite prickly with him.
Yeah, listen, it's just football and opinions. Brian Robson was like a dad for me when I came to Middlesbrough. He gave him a debut at 16, and I wouldn't have a bad word said about him. Lenny Lawrence signed me at Cardiff. He signed me at Middlesbrough previously before that, so I also wouldn't have a bad word to say about Lenny, even though I didn't play for a full season when he picked Ernie ahead of me every week. But everyone has their own opinions of managers. Chris Wilder, you know what I mean, I wasn't successful here at Middlesbrough last season. For me at Halifax Town, he was an amazing manager, and I could see so much potential in him. Everyone has a different opinion on different managers, and I totally get it. And for me, that's the joys of football, really. You know what I mean? That everyone's allowed an opinion, and everyone's opinion should count, because what I say about Dave Jones, Brian Robson, Chris Wilder should be my opinion and my opinion only. No one has to agree with it. You know what I mean? I think it's just very interesting to hear someone's point of view and someone's opinion or stories, or you know what I mean? Because what things that I say, for me, they're fact. You know what I mean? What I talk about in my life, what's happened to me is a true fact. With all those guys.
And that's the thing as well, isn't it? It's like there's obviously you see it from your point of view, and I've tried desperately, like, as you know, when you were still doing the show on a weekly basis, I tried everything to try and get Dave to come on with us and chat it out, and didn't get much back. And I've tried since to try and get him to come on and talk about his career and stuff like that. And I don't know whether it's because he links me to you, so I'm automatically blacklisted. I'm not sure what it is, but I mean, like, Mehmet Dalman's happy to come and sit and talk to me.
I have that quality that people get linked to me, good and bad.
That's all right. I don't mind. I like it. Tommy Tornado says, Andy, what's your favourite goal you scored?
If you're talking most important goal, it's got to be the Cardiff goal at Millennium Stadium against QPR. There's no comparison. You know what I mean? It's unquestionable. It was the biggest goal in the biggest game. It didn't get any bigger in Cardiff or Cardiff. It was just an unbelievable experience, an unbelievable feeling. one thing that I always wanted to do. I always wanted to play for Middlesbrough, and I always wanted to score for Middlesbrough. So when I got my first goal for Middlesbrough at the Riverside in front of a full house against Sunderland, that you know what I mean. When I look back and I see the videos and I see the goal, and I'm a little bit like cringing that I didn't celebrate better. I just ran about like an idiot, and you know what I mean. I do wish that I could turn the clock back in certain moments and tweak things a little bit. Maybe that have a good celebration and not look a little bit like I'm a super fan. You know what I mean. But listen, when you put yourself and drop yourself in that moment, it's pure adrenaline. But yeah, for me, the Cardiff goal was just really special and something else, and something that. What is it? 23 years later, 22 years later. At the minute, it's just an unbelievable
moment in time, mate. And also, I think the importance of it changed the course of history for Cardiff in a lot of ways because of at that point we weren't far from going. If we could kept failing to go up, eventually we'd have had to sell all our players, and we would have been in a lot of financial trouble earlier. And it's interesting, as you know, I go to Sleep Media to film my in-person shows, and they do a lot of work for they do the Welsh FA's YouTube channel, so I sort of pick their brains about different stuff. And I had an idea probably about a year ago that I wanted to make a film, like a documentary about that goal and the impact that it had, like the butterfly effect from it all. And today I had in the studio Kieran Gibbons, who's an award-winning filmmaker. So I've been picking his brain, and he's helped me out a bit in terms of how to get it started, get planning, and get some permission for certain footage, so they don't copyright strike it. So that's I'm hoping to get that started by the end of this year. Which is going to be interesting.
I think what you say there about what I mean, like we listen as players, we've had that discussion since, you know what I mean, as adults, you know what I mean, not just in that bubble of being a footballer. That if we hadn't won that game, regardless who scored the winning goal, I think if we'd have lost that game, Ernie wouldn't have stayed, because why would he? You know what I mean? He's a Premier League footballer. He wouldn't have been playing that level. Danny Gabardon, James Collins, Graham Kavanagh, Peter Thorne.
Those players were done.
Neil Alexander, Reece Weston, Gary Croft, Andy Campbell, Willie Boland. You know what I mean? Leggy. I could name the whole squad there, and every one of those players was too good to be playing at that level at the time. But league tables don't lie, and where you're playing for that reason. You know what I mean? That squad I've just named, that was an absolute dream to be in a dressing room with, to be on a pitch with, to be in a pub with. You know what I mean? Those guys were absolutely a absolute dream to be with. Absolute heroes, a lot of them. But end of the day, if that goal hadn't gone in, it would have been a catastrophe for that football club, I believe, because it would have left them in a right mess, and God knows where it might have been right now.
Yeah, and like I said, I think that there's a good documentary in that, and a good film in that, speaking to the people involved, looking at it from the club's point of view, and I think there's something in it, and I'm hoping to get started on that by the end of this year. Reece says, as a manager, you have to have a schedule in place for week to week. So my question is, how does a regular Monday slot on Ace Podcast Nation sound? I should have read that before. I put it in. I don't want to put you on the spot. Don't want to put you on the spot tonight. Leslie says, "What's the shirt behind you? You can't see it."
That is my Oldham Athletics 7-1 hat trick shirt when we beat Oldham away at Boundary Park 7-1. When I got the famous pie thrown in my face. I think and Andy Gorham was in goal, so it was it. Yet again, a game probably. People talk about goals and people talk about moments. That was a game which, for so many reasons, the Andy Gorham, he was my hero, getting a pie thrown in my face during the game, scoring a hat trick, winning 7-1. You know, I mean, so many moments in that game were absolutely just pivotal to make that game like probably the best game that I've probably played in.
Fair, I like it. And a pie in the face just makes it even more memorable.
Even better. And to add that one, I tracked him down on Twitter, so I don't know if that was true or not, but I mean, he did reach out and say it was him, so I can only believe him. I wouldn't have wasted the pie on me, to be fair, but fair play to him.
There we go. James Costley, welcome back, James. He says, who was the nastiest player you ever played against?
nastiest player, I'd probably say Neil Ruddock. For when I played against him a couple of times. Firstly, I played against him for Liverpool, and I made my full debut at Anfield at 17, just turned 17, and he was evil. He'd hit me, punch me, kick me, bite me, nip me. He did everything possible in a 90-minute game of football and got away with every single one of those things that I'm mentioning, and then shook my hand at the end of the game and bought me a pint, which I wasn't allowed to drink either. So it was a game that I'll never forget. It made me grow from a boy to a man in about 75 minutes, which was, in my football life, it was really good. But yeah, I think next time I played against him, I made a point that I was going to try and run rings around him, which didn't really happen, and I've done it since, which I've got a little bit more joy. But now Neil was a real proper defender, who you knew what you were going to get from him. So I think sometimes you like that. What you see is what you get, and I think that's makes you realise that those players are probably few and far between.
Indeed, mate. A couple of people said the same thing, so I'm going to mix them together. Leslie and Clive both said, great to have you back. They said one of the best goals you scored was against Manchester United. That was when you were young, wasn't it?
Yeah. I did score 2 against Man United. I scored a header, which I never scored a header. So it wasn't a great goal, but it was a pivotal moment in an FA Cup tie, which we won the game 2-0, which is great. And then I scored a volley at the Riverside, and we got beat by United 4-3, I think. It was a really special goal to score against a team full of World Cup winners, and you know what I mean, and international stars was fantastic. But yeah, I think sometimes I didn't remember certain goals because we didn't win the games. You know what I mean, as a negative effect sometimes, that it's more about the winning than the individual. I think when I retired, I think I saw how special those moments were, but they're still probably tainted with a little bit of regret that we didn't win those games.
Indeed, mate. Matthew says, what was Willie Boland like off the pitch? I loved his work rate on the field. Was he a top trainer? I will never have anyone say a bad word about Willie ever. Not that you were going to, but just anyone, because obviously he got me and myself and my wife together. So for me, he's a friend for life, legend for life. And he could do he could rob a bank, he could rob me blind, and I would still say he's the best person in the world ever.
Me and Willie were neighbours in Cardiff. We drove together to training. We argued every day. We fought every day. We played hard every day. We trained hard every day. But we partied harder off the pitch together. And we were best of friends off the pitch. And friendships evolve. Willie signed for Hartlepool. He came to live in Middlesbrough with me, which was great. You know, Willie had a really rough time when he came to the North East. His daughter got a really serious illness, so we supported the family and helped him out like everybody would. Willie was a top guy. Willie lived with my brother for a long time as well. So listen, I've got a huge affiliation with Willie. But yeah, just a top guy. But what you see is what you got with him as well. Like when you're on the training pitch, he would demand excellence. He wouldn't let you get away with a free one. If you've had a few drinks the night before and you weren't really up to training, he would tell you and grab hold of you and make sure that you put it in. But he would also, you know what I mean, put his arm around you and tell you how good you were as well. So he was a genuine nice guy.
Indeed, mate. Yeah, I couldn't have said about it myself. I got so much time for him. So much time. And my wife loves him as well, obviously. Like, he's very special to us for obvious reasons. So another thing I wanted to ask you, just going away from the questions, we'll come back to them in a minute. I'm sure there'll be plenty. Looking at the modern day football now, and you see the Saudi league is buying up players, and it started off as, you know, the Ronaldos, Benzema's, who were kind of coming to the end of their career. It's a payday. Then they're getting a bit younger with like Koulibaly and a few others, the Chelsea goalkeeper. And now we're seeing players start to go who are, you know, like 27, 28. Do you think because of the amount of money that they are throwing around and, you know, effectively it's a bottomless pit of money, do you think, you know, in 5 years or X amount of time, the Saudi league could become one of the top 5 leagues in the world?
I don't believe so. And I don't believe so because money makes you a little bit complacent, I believe. I think it takes your eye off the ball. It takes your eye off the prize. And I think in the Premier League at the minute, it's week in, week out, it's dog eat dog. You know what I mean? You can get beat by Crystal Palace. You can get beat by Liverpool. You can get beat by Bournemouth. You know what I mean? So I think there, you know what I mean? You look at Ronaldo's team tried to buy the league this year, and they failed because Ronaldo he can't do anything on his own. You know, if you filled the team up with all of the Premier League players and all of the best players in the world, then you're talking about a different story. For me, currently, I don't think they're bringing in enough. And listen, the amount of money what they're getting paid is astronomical. It's absolutely outrageous. But these players are already multi-millionaires. So what's the appetite? You know what I mean? They're not going there to win trophies. They're not going there to win the Champions League. They're not going there to win the World Cup. They're going there to earn money. And that's absolutely fine, by the way. I'm not criticising at all whatsoever. But I think when they look back at the career, you're talking the Neveses, you're talking the Koulibalis, you're talking Kantes, Benzema, you know, that these kind of players who probably could still win the Champions League, could still win the Premier League, could still win these kind of things. You know, for me, I would have loved to see Benzema in the Premier League, if that's coming off the bench, if that's doing something. I just think I think players possibly missed a trick.
Yeah, here's two examples for you straight away. Okay, so you got Ruben Neves leaving Wolves. United wanted him, Liverpool wanted him, Arsenal wanted him. I think Chelsea had certainly inquired about him. So you're talking all those clubs who, you know, were at the top tier of the Premier League. Then you look at Benzema. All right, he is coming to the end of his career, but United are desperate for a striker, and he was on a free. You know, he could have done a season like Zlatan did, or someone like that, and been the main man for a year. And I just question. My thing with it is, like you said, I would never criticize any player, no matter their age, for chasing or having that going for that amount of money, because it's so much money. No matter how much money you got, it's a ridiculous amount. But at some point, like if you're a top level Premier League or La Liga player or Champions League player, you're earning more money per week or per year than you can ever spend. And it's like, how much money do you need? And at the end of the year, at the end of your career, what you look back on is trophies and achievements.
Totally agree. And I'll use Harry Kane as an example now. You know that Harry Kane's got a huge dilemma on his hands right now. He's got a potential decision to make. Does he stay at Spurs and become the all-time top goal scorer in the Premier League and break that record this season or next season, or does he go to Bayern Munich and win the Bundesliga and maybe win the Champions League? You know, he's got a huge decision. You know what I mean? Because he either goes and wins a couple of medals, which potentially won't do at Spurs, or he goes and becomes a great in the UK. So for me, that's a really good dilemma to have. It's a really good opportunity to have.
It is.
And, you know, I look at Messi though as well. Like Messi 2 years ago when I was negative when he signed for Paris, because I thought he was going there for the money. He was going there to win trophies. He's won a lot of trophies. He's gone there to win the Champions League. Didn't materialise because he didn't have the quality. He's now gone to go and enjoy his life in the US with David Beckham and go and earn more money than what he's earning now. So, you know what I mean? For me, he's probably done things a little bit the right way.
Yeah, it's weird. Like Harry Kane, I think I feel sorry. The one part I feel sorry for him is back when Man City tried to sign him. Daniel Levy had allegedly promised him a move at the end of the season if he stayed one more year, and then he kind of didn't see it through. And now it seems like he's got a year left on his contract. He seems to want to go. He seems to also want to stay in the Premier League. But Daniel Levy has priced him out of a move to United or anyone else, because he won't sell. If it's a Premier League club, it's like 100-odd million or whatever. But if it's to Bayern Munich, it's 70 million. And I feel like if I'm Harry Kane and I want to stay in the Premier League to be the all-time goal scorer, but also Daniel Lee, you know, he's given his whole of his 20s to Tottenham. He stayed when he could have gone. He's never kicked up a fuss. He refused to train for a couple of days, a couple of years back because of a broken promise. But generally, his attitude's been impeccable. And when it's been a shambles, by the way, at Spurs, he has never criticised the club, the owners. He's never kicked up a fuss. And I think they owe it to him to say, right, if he goes to them and said, I want to move to a Premier League club, they owe it to him to sell him for a reasonable price, in my opinion. But as you know, there's no
totally, because the thing is also
it's a business to them.
I also see it from a fan's point of view and for the club's point of view that yes, Harry Kane's been very loyal. He could have left. He's also been very looked after by a football club as well. He's getting very well paid. They've made him and his family very rich people. by giving him the contracts that they've given him. Yes, how he's earned it because he's put the performances in and he's done really well. But I think that club and for that player, that marriage has been absolutely brilliant for each other, you know. And I think for me, would I leave and tarnish it like Sol Campbell did? I don't know. It's a big decision. Big decision.
Absolutely, mate. The other question I wanted to get your thoughts on, it looks at the moment as if Aaron Ramsey's going to go to Cardiff on a free. So it looks like it's pretty much tied up. But I said on the Cardiff show a couple of weeks back, if Cardiff sign him and the players around him are just what's in the squad now, and they kind of just pop him in and go, there you go, you're an elite footballer, do your thing, I think he'll struggle. Because he's 30 odd. He hasn't got the pace that he had. He's not going to play, 30, 40 games a season. If you get 25 out of him, I think that's a good return. But I think you've got to get legs around him and someone who can pass the ball. Like, how do you think he'll do it in the Championship now at the age he's at, certainly in the latter part of his career? There's no doubt about his ability, but like, how do you think he'll go with Cardiff?
I think he's got to adapt his game. For me, I think he's got to play in a specific role which matches his temperament, his age, his current style, the way that he's got to be. For me, I'd probably sit him in front of the back a little bit like Joe Allen does. I'd sit him instead of going forward. He won't be able to go forward and bomb all the time. You know what I mean? For me, he's a player who likes the ball. He's a player who's comfortable on the ball. He can set things up. His range of passing is very good. He takes good set pieces. For me, I'd let him sit and I'd have legs around him. And I think you get more out of him. You get more games out of him. He'll use his voice. He'll be very successful. He'll get bums on seats. He'll get more fans on at the Cardiff City Stadium, which is maybe the potential reason why he's going. For me, it's a no-brainer for everybody. It's a no-brainer for Aaron Ramsey. I think he wants to finish his career. He started at Cardiff City, go and finish at Cardiff City. The fans want him. Wales need him. I think the whole thing should
make sense.
It makes sense for everybody, but he's got to play. You know what I mean? I know we spoke about Gareth Bale and that he, you know what I mean, before he went to America, that there was potential before he won the World Cup. For me, it was a bad decision. He went to the World Cup without playing football games. You know what I mean? You've got to play games. If you want to be a footballer, don't just be comfortable and sit there. You know what I mean? We don't know the ins and outs of a contract with Aaron, and my guess is the club will probably look after themselves and make sure it's paid as you play. So if he wants to get paid, he'll need to play football. Yeah,
and I think it's interesting because you said there about having him as the sort of sitting midfielder in that Joe Allen role. I was thinking more that he would play in a number 10 role as like the 3 behind the striker. And then because they've got Ruben Colwell, and in my opinion, if Ruben Colwell isn't going to get a substantial amount of starts this year, he has to go out on loan, or he's in danger of becoming a player who has got all the potential in the world but hasn't quite realised it. And I thought that if Aaron comes in, that's almost perfect for Ruben Colwell because he gets to train with Aaron Ramsey every day. But you also know Aaron Ramsey's not going to play 40 plus games a season. So then Ruben Colwell would get, a good few starts in his favourite position in that number 10 role. But then you need the two in midfield behind him to be, one's got to be that good defensive midfielder, and one I think has got to be like in the pivot who's technically very good, but also got the energy and the legs to get about.
Listen, I was very lucky. I watched Cardiff come to the Riverside this season, and for 45 minutes, I haven't seen a performance like it. Cardiff absolutely blew Middlesbrough away. They were 3-0 up at half time. It was the movement, it was the creativity, the legs, the energy. And my only criticism, if they had somebody who wasn't buying into that, it just falters, and you're just never getting out those areas. And for me, I think you need to make sure, unless the plan is that he doesn't play every game, but then you need that consistency, continuity, because if you come in in Aaron's place, then you're not getting that consistency. So as a player myself, would I want to play 10 games a season, 15 games a season? No, I want to play 30, 40. You know what I mean? To get that fitness, to get that sharpness, to get that that consistency in my game. So I think it's a fine margin between getting this right and it just being a publicity stunt. You know what I mean? It's got to be done right. It's got to make sure that it's right for Cardiff City, because if the whole structure of the season doesn't work because of trying to build a team around one player, You know what I mean? That there's no doubt in the quality in the Championship. The Championship for me, every season's getting harder. You know what I mean? For me, Middlesbrough overachieved last year. I mean, with what they had. And I look at the Premier League teams who've come down: Leeds, Southampton. You know, like they've got the parachute money. Leicester signing Conor Cody, who's England national. You know what I mean? These kind of teams are they're throwing serious cash around. You know what I mean? So for me, the likes of the Cardiffs, the likes of the Middlesbroughs, the likes of the Norwiches, the likes of the Blackburn Rovers, Sunderland, we've got to all get it right. Have to all get it right.
Yeah, I've had quite a lot of discussions about some of the players who are out of contract this year available to sort of that Championship sort of level. There's some good, experienced top Championship players in there, like Oliver Norwood, John Fleck, Pookie from Norwich. Like, these are people who've proven in the Championship that they're very, very top level. And I think teams like Cardiff and Middlesbrough and, you know, the rest, they've got to be clever, and they got to pick up these kind of free transfers because, like you say, Leicester just sold James Maddison. They've got parachute payments. They're going to have money to burn, and they're going to want to go straight back up.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting to me. And obviously, in the Cardiff case, they got a new manager from Turkey who no one really knows a great deal about. Is he going to go with what the people at the club tell him, or is he going to go with the people he knows, which is maybe in that there's more sort of European-based players coming in? Because, as you know, mate, the manager lives and dies on the results. So if I'm a manager, I'd rather go with my decisions rather than someone else telling me sign this player, sign that player.
If things don't work out as a manager, one thing I've learned, especially in the time that I've done it, that if you go on someone else's recommendation or go on someone else's ideas and it doesn't work out, you're the one who gets to blame anyway. So just take responsibility and go yourself, because you know what I mean. It's you hold the can. You know what I mean. And if you win, brilliant. The players take the plaudits. If you lose, it's your fault as a manager. So for me, just live and die by your own calls and decisions.
So here's an interesting one then, mate. By all accounts, the links to Aaron Ramsey and Cardiff and the sort of reports that it was nearly done, they were out before the manager was appointed. If he comes in and they say, yeah, we've got Aaron Ramsey on a free, he's pretty much done, and that manager says, I don't fancy him, what should Cardiff have done or do in that position? Do they back the manager, or do they say, no, look, you know, he's Wales captain, he's this, he's that, he's a great player, we think we're going to bring him in? Because that's difficult then, isn't it? I'm not saying that has happened.
It's a manager's philosophy, how he's going to build his team around. Does he want young, fresh, hungry, quick players going forward? If he does, then unfortunately Aaron Ramsey doesn't fit the bill. Does he want experience? Does he want however he wants to play his team? Listen, Aaron Ramsey will fit in any team because he's a good footballer. Sure. He may have to adapt his game, like I say. I just think, you know, I just think I can see him sat alongside Joe Rawls and just absolutely dominating the midfield and having runners ahead of them and them two spraying balls around. I just think it'd be a joy to watch because you know what I mean, they've both got love for Cardiff City, and you know what I mean, when you've got two lads in the heart of the midfield who love Cardiff City, you've got half the battle. Yeah,
and they're very, very clever players also. Okay, we'll go back to some questions. Kay Child said, who's the most famous name in Andy Campbell's mobile phone?
I don't like name dropping. If people in work are watching this and they see me name dropping, they'll just I'll get stick tomorrow. It's got to be someone from the show, hasn't it? So someone we had. Let's go. I'll go Brian Robson. Brian Robson's the most famous person in my book. I know we didn't get him in my phone book. I know we didn't get him in the show, but either him or Emil Heskey.
Yeah. That brings me quite nicely into the next sort of thing I wanted to discuss. Obviously, looking back on the show, we started it off and it was just me and you talking football stories, and then we did the Championship show, which was obviously focused on the Championship. And then when COVID hit, we made some changes and adapted. And we decided that there was no football to talk about. So we're going to have a different guest on each week, which, you know, 99.9% of the time was through you. And that was, it's a lot of work trying to chase people and get guests. It's very difficult. And like, I know from my, from doing the channel, it's so difficult just constantly chasing people to get them on and stuff. Like, when you look back at it, apart from it being awesome, like, what's some of your favourite moments or favourite guests? Like, what do you look back on fondly of it?
I think the overall picture that I really enjoyed from it was that I got to ask some questions that I wanted the answers for. I think that, like, being a super fan and some of the things that you probably don't hear, it was like a little bit uncensored in it, that you can ask certain things. I think players were quite accommodating. That every time we asked them, is there something that you don't want to talk about, they were always very open and honest that, no, I'll talk about anything. That I think when they come out of the game, they're a little bit more uncensored, that they're happy to talk about the good, the bad and the ugly, which I think is really important as a footballer, because you talk to a current footballer, you're not allowed to ask certain questions, you're going to get certain answers, a little bit like a robot, and it just becomes boring, sterile, and just it's just no much fun, you know. But for me, we had some unbelievable guests on. And obviously, close to me, obviously we had my brother on, and I think with what happened in the family, that looking back now, it's something which is special. So that, like, for me, that, and I know we've discussed it before. Obviously, my brother passed away. That had the biggest hits at the time on the show. So for me, it was like, but that probably now sticks out more because of what's happened. But for me, it was special anyway, because it was just a free for all, and like the comments on the show were lovely, and it was just having a bit. It was like back in COVID again, where you were just sat on Zoom and having a bit of a crack and a bit of a laugh on the call.
Yeah, that was it was definitely up there with one of my favorite shows, because it was just like an hour and a half of just laughs and stories, and you had your mum and your dad was in the comments and stuff, and there was just like it was very just a nice feeling. One of my favorite shows when I look back as well was Graham Jones, and when you look at what he's gone on to do since the show, is incredible. But I was glued to my screen listening to Graham talk. Like, it was fascinating. I thought Emil Heskey as well was incredible.
Graham's philosophies and ideas in football, for me, blew me away. What his ideas of coaching methods, his ideas of how he wants the game being played. And excuse me, when you look at Newcastle and you look at Eddie Howe and you look at Jason Tyndall, and you think those two are fronting things up, well, Graham's just sat right in behind those two very nicely, and is probably doing a lot more work than everybody realizes and understands. And for me, that's the sign of someone who doesn't like the limelight, someone who doesn't like to probably hear his own voice, but he has a huge impact on the rest of those players. And when you hear those players talk about the good, I guarantee you that they'll speak really, really fondly of his coaching methods, of his tactics, and his awareness around the place, because he's a very, very, very well educated man, and his passion for football is just unbelievable. And listen, the people he's worked with, by the way, and, you know what I mean. Yes, he's working at a Premier League club now in the Champions League next season. But he's worked with Roberto Martinez, Thierry Henry. Like, he's had the best education upbringing in football that, you know what I mean, that you could probably kill for, really.
Is he still part of the England setup? He is, isn't he?
Yeah. So he's like
the
listening,
assistant,
and rightly so, by the way. You know what I mean? Because you always notice, don't you, when managers reach out to coaches who are part of clubs, because clubs shut down international games because everyone's in international football nowadays in the Premier League. So for me, it's a no-brainer to have the best of the best. And for me, Gareth's, I love Gareth Southgate. I was lucky enough to play with him at Middlesbrough, and you know what I mean, for me, he's a top man. But for him to understand, to get the best people in around him, for me, it's that's very, very clever as well.
Yeah, and like the feedback which I used to get, and I still do when I bump into people and we talk about the show, is the feedback was always, normally, if you see a footballer on anything else, BBC, Sky, whatever, even if they're in a relaxed situation, say talking to Gary Neville or Jamie Carragher or something, they are still in media mode. Whereas the thing which people seem to like is it was live, so they could ask questions. The atmosphere between us and the guest was very relaxed, but also they were just themselves. So what you got footballers being themselves, or ex-footballers, or current managers, whatever it may be. We had a range of different, things, and they was just very natural and just a conversation, hearing stories, things like that. And people don't see that from footballers these days.
No. And they also, they also don't say like. But listen, everyone who's watched this show, everyone who's seen all the guests, for me, one which went down in history was Barry Hales in the caravan.
Oh,
Just
mate.
it was ridiculous. It was one of the most frustrating evenings
But
I'd had.
by the end, it was just funny, wasn't it? Like,
But yeah, by the time it had finished and we eventually decided just to hang up,
just give up.
it was a relief. It was a relief just to cut ties and just say end of the show, because I was so excited for the show. Barry was a centre forward. He was a hero. He'd done all this stuff at Fulham under Kevin Keegan, and I was so excited to hear all these stories. And then I didn't hear a word he said all night, and it was just so sad. It was just I was gutted.
And the thing is, like, the first sort of probably hour of it, we're like, I'm desperately trying to repair the connection for him and do things from my end and bringing him back in and out and trying my best to also then we're like trying to, be professional, keep the show going. And he's like dipping in and out. And then we'd be talking because he's dropped out. And then suddenly he'd be talking up and he'd be halfway through a story. And it was like, it was stressful for a bit. And then in the end, it was like, we can't do anything. We can't control it. So let's just embrace it, sort of thing. Cade says Klaus Lundig van was one of his great guests. Well.
On Klaus, yeah. Like what I loved about Klaus, my naivety, you know what I mean? I apologise to him because I didn't understand how hard he'd had life after football. And listen, I didn't handle coming out of football very well because it was nobody ever got me ready for it. But I certainly didn't understand how difficult other people had it, and some of the stories that he told us, and some of the things that he's recovered from. And he's a very lucky, in his own words, he's a very lucky man to still be where he is now with the family, with his beautiful family and stuff. And you know what? Like, fair play to him, because and that's where every footballer who's come out of the game that and I've always said this, you know what I mean? I said this to everybody on here, and everybody on here knows that I'm genuine to my word, that if anybody struggled with anything over lockdown, COVID, to reach out, send us a message, and we always got back to people when we could. And we always help people out. And that's footballers as well, that we always keep that one on sale. Sort that. We'll talk about that in a minute. They're just genuine, and people need help. On this one, right? So Pete's daughter, Brooke Newton. Brooke was my captain at Middlesbrough. Their family, I can't thank their family enough for what they did for me in the 2 years. They've had some. I know you won't mind me saying they've had some real tough times in the family over the last couple of years, and we've tried to help and support and guide and do what we need to do because we're just genuine people who like to help and support each other. But you know what, the family, I can't help them enough. I can't support them enough, and I can't thank them enough for all the help they give me. So, cheers, Pete, you and Brooke and the family, amazing people.
And on that, I saw a comment. Peter said he was gutted that he'd missed it. He'd only sort of just come in now as we're sort of in the final straight. But Peter, it is on our YouTube channel. It'll be on our YouTube channel like straight away after the show, and it's also, you can get it on an audio download as well. So you can go back and watch the first hour. Someone just asked a really interesting question I wanted to ask you. Are there? Matthew Angel said, are there things in place now to advise youngsters of life after football? So I think he means when their careers are over. I might be wrong, but I'll make it a twofold question in terms of support after retirement, but also support when they get to 16, 17, 18. They've been in academies all their life, or since like 6 or 7, and then they're just dumped and dropped and told they're not good enough. I think there's nowhere near enough support at that point.
No, I honestly, I'm sure we've had this discussion on here, and
probably,
and even still, years down the line, we aren't anywhere further and closer to where we should be. Listen, you just mentioned there, Si, you can be an 8-year-old boy, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, get dropped at 16. Your world has ended at a 16-year-old boy. You know what I mean? Because you're probably not tried in school as much, like me. You probably put all your eggs in one basket, like me. And if I'd have felt short as a footballer, I wouldn't have known what to do. I'd have been stuck. I'd have been lost. And who would have been there to help and guide me? That would have been. That's my huge concern. Listen, the PFA do a huge amount. When I came out the game, they did reach out for me. Yes, I was struggling already at the time with other things, and life was a grey place and a dark place, but they did reach out and put me in the right direction where I needed to be, which was fantastic. But I was lucky. 6 months is a long time, and for those people, and I know there's been a lot of people, by the way, who've lost their own lives to mental health and to suicide because of coming out the game. There's one's too many. For me, there's something's got to be done. There's got to be more. There's got to be more which can be done. You know what I mean? And if that's social media and people reaching out to people, then so be it. But I do think someone's got to help those kind of people and people coming out of the game, because people coming out of the game at 16, people coming out of the game at 30, people coming out of the game at 38. For me, sometimes it's irrelevant what age you are. Because if you're 38 and you're still not ready to come out of the game, or you don't know anything else, then you're coming out of it. Because at 38, you still could be in a position where you still need to work again, because you've played not in the Premier League and haven't earned the money that Premier League players are earning. So, you know what I mean? For me, there's got to be some kind of help and guidance, you know.
That's my dog trampling the claws on the floor. If everyone can hear that. Thanks for that, Jazzy. The other thing, and because we were just talking about the show just before that as well, is one of the things I'm most proud of, apart from, you know, the shows and the quality of the shows and the guests and everything which went into it, is the community which we built. And particularly during that sort of period of COVID where people were at home and they were struggling, the amount of people who would be jumping in on a Monday to watch the shows, and, you know, they'd be taking part in the shows and asking questions and watching, but also they'd be talking amongst themselves within the chat, checking on each other. And I know there's people who've met through the channel and the show. They didn't know each other before, and they met through watching the show and became good friends and stuff like that. And so I'm kind of proud of the community which we created.
Yeah. I know the viewers set up a WhatsApp group. There was regular contact. You know what I mean? For me, that's what it is. Because if it helps out one person, you know,
it's worth it, isn't it?
Like Will's obviously set up the score predictor, which is fantastic. And if Will's on the chat, I don't know if he is, by the way. So I'm not saying
was, yeah. He's
like, thanks very much, Will, because I know obviously the money this year got donated to in the Teesside for the air ambulance. So, you know what I mean? For me, it's little things, but it's a little thing to someone else, but it's a massive thing to us. You know what I mean? And just to have people watching the show, it's a huge thing. You know, it made it worthwhile doing it, because if sometimes it was for our own well-being and mental health, but then it became more serious for someone else's. So I think that realised there was a bigger picture involved.
Yeah, spot on, mate. 100%. And like that question, you know, Reese put a question to you earlier, but the way he worded it is I didn't see it till the end. But like, he's not the only one who's asked that question or the similar sort of thing. And people ask me, I would say probably at least a couple of times a week, is it going to come back? Is it this? Is it that? And I think, look, I'm not going to say anything about it now, because that's a discussion that me and you would have to have away from the live show. But as I told you the day that you said that you were going to have to stop it, the door was always open. If you're 20 years down the line, we'll get it back on the go with our grey hair. And I would love it, mate. It was a very special time. And, I think it is what it is. Rob says, I'll bring it up. He says, Ace Nation Army, not to kiss ass, but it's important to show some love back to the brand as well. Thank you, mate. I appreciate that. I appreciate that massively. And there's more people asking about Monday nights. Like, we're not going to ask that question now. It's not fair. But let's talk about Steven Gerrard's got a job in Saudi Arabia, mate. Right? As you know, one of my absolute bugbears with football, and something which I really, how can I put it politely? Because as you know, I try not to swear in your presence or on the shows, Andy. Really, really gets on my nerves, because you had like Mick McCarthy and all these different managers who just kept getting jobs, and there was other managers, and then you have people saying, "Oh, they never give young managers a go," and it's like, but that's because you keep giving the jobs to Sam Allardyce and, you know, Mick McCarthy and all these guys, and it really used to grind my gears. And now I think we've got a new generation of that, and I think look, Frank Lampard was awful at the end of last year. He wasn't very good at Everton, and he didn't do particularly good at Chelsea. And I know people point to his time at Derby where he did all right, but let's not forget he didn't get promoted with a team full of sensational footballers who were too good for the Championship. And I just feel like he'll still get a job now. You know, if a job comes up in the Premier League or whatever, he'll get a job. And it frustrates me because there's top managers out there. There's good managers in the Premier Championship. There's good managers in League One who deserve an opportunity. And I just feel like we're going to go the same way as we did the 15 years previous, and it's going to be the same group of managers just doing a merry-go-round. Is that just me, mate, or is that a frustration for
No, well,
I'll
I'll address Stevie first, and I do find it a bit. I find it a bit strange. He was Premier League manager last season. He won the SPL the season before. So to jump backwards, in my opinion, 3-4 steps is a strange decision, because if he wins the Saudi League next year, which would be brilliant by the way for him, be a fantastic achievement. But what will it mean in terms of will he then go and be Tottenham manager, or you know what I mean? Look at the new Tottenham manager. The new Tottenham manager has won the SPL with Celtic twice in two seasons. You know what I mean? So for me, you've got to have that aspiration to want to step back up. You know what I mean? Premier League is a different animal, and the owners and the chairmen are looking for people who've got that drive and ambition. John Sheridan, you know, I know I was probably John thinks I probably don't like him, but he's one who always gets a job. Always used to get a job.
I've been trying to get him to be his agent, to be my agent.
I was hoping for that. But no, listen, I do hope that people do well. But I just think Stevie doesn't need the money. I would happily see them on Sky Sports and being a pundit and listening from his expertise than seeing him managing Saudi Arabia. Like for me, I think it's in my opinion. And that's in my opinion. We talk about opinions. It's just a waste.
Yeah, and Matthew's just put some cash emojis on screen. Yeah. It's like, as I said about 20 minutes ago, like, how much money do you need really at the end of the day? Like, these guys are multi-millionaires already. And now if Steven Gerrard, in my opinion, and it's not just directed at Steven Gerrard, if Steven Gerrard's serious about becoming a top-level manager and he wants to manage Liverpool one day, say, right, how is going out to Saudi Arabia going to get him there? Is it going to improve his skills as a manager?
Let's not talk.
I don't understand him. He may as well be better off going and managing in League One or League Two.
Yeah, totally agree.
Higher standards.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, look at Vincent Kompany. You know that he went to Burnley this year from Anderlecht. Nobody thought he was going to achieve anything. He's brought a brand of football to Burnley, which I watched him a couple of times this season, and yes, it wasn't pretty at times, but it was effective. It won football matches. He's got them out the league, won them the title. He's now going to the Premier League. For me, if he can hold his own this season, he'll get a very good job out of it, because I think people want to see if he can really handle working with better players or against better teams, and be more tactically aware. Same as the new Spurs manager. You know what I mean? These managers are under pressure because they've never been tested against proper opposition. It's not questioning the players they've got. They've worked with some really good footballers week in, week out, and train with them every day. They're not doubting that at all. It's the opposition. You know what I mean? Celtic only got tested once, twice a season, 3 times a season against the Rangers and other top sides. And for me, it's the same thing. You know what I mean? For me, Burnley didn't get tested all season, apart from towards the end of the season when teams wanted to try and fight for promotion or fight for the playoffs. So it's going to be a very interesting one next season. But that's what makes the Premier League the best league in the world. We've got the best managers, the best players, and
now they've been even more money coming in. If Qatar take over Man United, you're going to have Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and Dubai owning, or United Arab Emirates owning 3 of the biggest clubs in the league.
Yeah,
it's Premier League is the place to be. I got to say, I think it's left La Liga and Serie A and the others behind. I really do, in terms of the brand, in terms of the football, but also in terms of the competition now, because we all know, like, Spain is 2 or 3 teams realistically can win that league. Italy, there's a handful of teams that usually win it. The Premier League, while the same teams are competing for the title, on any day, any team can beat any team. And you're seeing more and more different teams competing in these European spots, like Brighton, Brentford's, Newcastle. They're all there or thereabouts. And I think it's really interesting how it's developing. Off topic, Rob Boyle says, if you were Wales manager, would you have a look at Paul Mullin from Wrexham to see if he's up to the standard?
I think every player is probably worth a go. I think it's a big season for Paul this season to see if he can do it in League Two. And I know the answer to it myself, because I believe probably, and this is probably sounds stupid to everybody else, but League Two will potentially be easier than it is in the conference, because you know what I mean, because he'll get potentially more time on the ball. People will give them a little bit more on the ball, and some of the goals that he can score from nothing, by the way, are unbelievable. So for me, he knows where the goal is. Some of the goals he scored, I think Wrexham will do really well this year. I think they would have done well anyway, because they'll
do you see their link? Do you see their link with Nani after the?
Yeah,
he will destroy League Two. He will, even at his age.
If you've got owners who have got the reputation to fund a project like they are, and to bring in, not just bring in people, because people don't. It's the right players in the right areas. You know what I mean? They needed a real top goalkeeper to get them over the line last year, and they brought in Ben Foster. You know what I mean? But Wrexham would not have got promoted if Ben Foster hadn't saved the penalty kick from Sedwin Scott. Yeah, it wouldn't have happened. You know what I mean? So that masterstroke proved that it was a brilliant move, and you know what I mean. So they're not stupid. You know what I mean? The businessmen, end of the day. You know what I mean? There's not many stupid film stars. You know what I mean? Who haven't got their head screwed on. You know what I mean? So they've got a brain. They know what they're doing. They're very successful in what they're doing, and I think they'll take Wrexham to some real interesting heights, which will be great for Welsh football.
Here's something for you, mate. Wrexham will be in the Premier League before Cardiff are.
Wow.
They will. I'm relatively sure of it.
No, well, I think.
Do you know why though I say that? It's because of the difference in how they run off the field.
If Cardiff don't sell, then I think Cardiff will sell low. I think Cardiff will have a new owners in the next 12, 18 months.
Maybe.
Not early.
Yeah. I hope so, mate. I really do. I think that does change things. You're right, but
change the dynamics, because every owner's holy grail is a Premier League, even if it's Premier League and then parachute money for the next 3 years. It's that model of parachute money.
Saves clubs.
Promotion. It works. Leicester City did it before they won the Premier League. They did it for years. So
it secures the long-term future of the club, doesn't it? The parachute payments.
Model works. Yeah, the model works.
But I mean, in Cardiff's case at the moment, they're so badly run off the field that, like, they sack a manager, they have no idea who they're going to bring in, or they sack a manager, but they don't really have a reason to sack him, and it's a bit of shambolic, mate.
And I think that's the frustration side, isn't it? That there's probably no rhyme or reason, and somebody gets a sack, and there's names getting touted about, and then all of a sudden a name gets thrown in that nobody knows who it is, and it's a little bit of the unknown again, and. You know what I mean? I think it's the consistency, you know, that I don't know. We can talk about, probably 2 or 3 years ago, we spoke on the show about Craig Bellamy. You know what I mean? For me, he should have had the opportunity. For me, maybe he was offered it and he didn't want it because he's going to be assistant manager in the Premier League. But like for me, I'm sure Craig would want an opportunity to branch out and be his own manager. And Cardiff City, what a better place to start.
Yeah, I mean, I heard 2 different versions of it, but basically, one is that he wouldn't work for the current owners again. And then the other one is that he's very happy working with Vincent Kompany as his number 2. So, I mean, you know, it is what it is, really. You can't really speculate on it. But I'm going to get to Leslie's question now. But before I do, Reese says, Paul Mullin scored 32 goals for Cambridge in League 2. And Geraint said, didn't Paul Mullin end up top scorer in League 1 a few seasons ago? So, I mean...
listen... Yeah, people can have. It's more the consistency as well, isn't it? You know, and when you're doing it with good sides who know how you play your strengths, and for me, centre forwards like a fine wine. You get better with age. You know what I mean? There's certain people who get better with age. You know what I mean? So I wasn't one of them.
Yeah, and I think my thing with with Paul Mullin is for Wales is like there's no harm in having a look at him and giving him a go. My personal feeling is he probably isn't up to that kind of international standard, like that elite level. Like this isn't Wales of a while ago where a lot of the squad is made up of League One and League Two players. It is predominantly Premier League, Championship. And I think, but look, what he has got is he's got in his locker something special.
Yeah,
And
no,
those kind of players
totally
sometimes
agree.
step up.
I totally agree. I think it's also disrespectful for the group if you know what I mean. You've got some good young players who play their trade at a higher level and don't get an opportunity. You know that I remember at Cardiff when obviously when Ernie and Gabs were playing. Well, Gabs especially was playing as a regular centre half in League One. He was marking Del Piero out the game when they beat Italy in the Millennium Stadium. You know that I think Wales have evolved since that moment. You know what I mean? Not since that moment, but since that time, Wales now look at elite players, Premier League, Championship. You know what I mean? So in order for someone to break through, for me, they've got to be extra special.
Yeah, I agree. I if they have like friendlies, I'd be tempted to bring him in and just have a look. But ultimately, we should have strikers within the under-21s who are better than Paul Mullin at the age he's at and the standard he's at. And that's no disrespect to Paul. It's just it's fact, isn't it? Like this.
Well, the system. The
system's there for the reason.
What's the point in the system? What's the point in the 16s, the 18s, the 21s if they're not going to be utilised? And as a young player, sometimes you will get a little bit disillusioned by the whole system if you're not getting an opportunity because you say it as a friendly, give them an opportunity. Well, if I'm at under 21 national, I've scored my last friendly game for the 21s, and I'm expecting that opportunity. So it's a real dilemma for coach, for a manager, which is a good dilemma, by the way, because you want the best for the country. But you know what I mean. It's about keeping that happy camp, so to speak.
Indeed, mate. Right, just to finish us off there, mate. Leslie says, here's a question: would Celtic or Rangers finish in the top 6 of the Premier League?
No,
absolutely not.
No. Listen, the Premier League's got too strong now. For me,
far too strong.
You've got your Man Cities, your Arsenals, your Liverpools, your Chelseas, your Tottenhams, Man Uniteds. You've got far too many teams in that elite group. For me, they'd struggle to fit in the middle group.
Brighton, Brentford, Fulham.
Yeah. The teams who are even the Wolves and
Wolves.
you know what I mean. For me, Brighton, overachieved this year. You know what I mean. Leeds. Are Leeds? Are they any worse than the Leeds? Are Leeds better than them? Because Leeds are better than them, then they go down. So it's a tough one because as the size of the club, they should be in the top, and they should be in the top 3.
If you look at the standard of the football, I'll put another question to you then. If you put Celtic and Rangers in the Championship this year, would they get promoted? I don't think they would.
I don't think they'd run away with it if they did. Listen, Si, I'm not being disrespectful to Celtic. Celtic win the league. They won the league the last couple of years. Brendan Rodgers is going in. He's probably going to do an unbelievable job. Job. When I dropped down and left Cardiff and went to Dunfermline, I played against Celtic at when I played for Dunfermline. I played at Hampden Park in the Scottish Cup final. They had Chris Sutton, John Hartson, Henrik Larsson, Sean Maloney, Roy Keane, Stilion Petrov. They had a top side. I'm talking top side who all those players either went on to play in the Premier League or had played in the Premier League. You know what I mean? And I don't see that now in the SPL. I see players moving from the SPL potentially to the Championship and at good levels in the Championship and maybe some in the Premier League. But I don't see stars like I've just named there. And I'm talking Rangers back in the day: Andy Gorham, Paul Gascoigne, Michael Laudrup. You know, these top players who've played for the country, who've played in World Cups, who make things happen, who get you so excited. You know what I mean? Like, it's, for me, some of those moments and some of those players that's where the Scottish football are missing those kind of big players now.
So here's a follow-up question for you then, mate. Right? Do you think if you were manager of Celtic, you could win the league in your first season? But before you answer that, do you also think if you were manager of Burnley last year, you could have won the Championship?
Would I win my? I'd like to think that I had the tools to win it at Celtic, but in reality, you know what I mean. It's a real tough thing, and if you're going into things thinking you're going to blow teams away, that I don't know, from an outside looking in at Celtic, I thought they should be winning these games 4, 5, 6 every week, and they're winning, scraping last minute winners. I'm watching games on Sky and thinking, like, wow, they're struggling. Look at the team, but sometimes just things just don't work out. You know, what I mean, Celtic didn't win the league before the manager came in, and Steven Gerrard won it, and it was just he leaves, and the new manager comes in and struggles. Wow, he's got the same squad plus better. It's a real tough one. Burnley, for me, I looked at Burnley's team and didn't expect them to win the league with that team. You know what I mean? I looked at Norwich had a better squad on paper, and look where they ended up. I looked at other teams and thought they should be winning the league. Where did they end up? Not even in the top 12. You know what I mean? For me, Burnley he brought in some real good young players on loans, which I'm not sure if he's going to keep or if he's bought them in full time. But for me, the way that it wasn't an attractive way of playing. I watched Burnley 3 times last season, and the 3 games that they watched, they won all 3. Very dull, but they got the job done. They won games of football, and the job in the Championship is keep clean sheets. You do that, you'll always score. Score the first goal, you win your game, and you know, I mean, that's what they did. And to every player looked like they knew the job. Every player looked like they enjoyed playing for the manager. Every player ran through a brick wall for their football club. And for me, if you have that chemistry of those 3 things, you're going to be successful.
Yeah, and do you know what? Everything which you just described is exactly what Malky Mackay's Cardiff City was like the year they won the Championship. They were not good to watch, but they kept clean sheets and they scored the odd goal and they ran through a brick wall for the manager, which tells you a lot, I think, about
and
what
listen,
is needed.
that's just the Championship. I think that's why a lot of teams struggle to transition from the Championship to the Premier League, because
100%.
the gulf's massive. And you've got to change your brand. You've got to change your players. Look at Nottingham Forest. Yes, Nottingham Forest stayed up, but they stayed up by a turnaround of 45 players. So all the team who got them promoted, there's probably 1 or 2 still in the squad, which is heartbreaking for those players who didn't get an opportunity in the Premier League, considering they worked so hard to get there. They brought in all these players. You know what I mean? I think Nottingham Forest next year will struggle, really struggle. I think we'll go down. Because I think
they'll do better next year because the players that they brought in.
I don't think they'll bring in as many players.
I think those players have bedded in, though, haven't they?
Yeah, but I just think the teams who are going up, I think will be fresh. I think the teams who are the Spurses and the Crystal Palaces and the Brentfords and the Brightons and even the Bournemouths, I just think the Premier League's got even harder this year. Well, next season coming up.
Yeah. Right, to finish us off, mate, I got a little treat. And just bear with me because I'm making this up on the fly, okay?
Yeah, go. Nervous. Yeah, I'm nervous. I'm
making these up on the fly, so bear with me, okay? This was from Cade as well. Do you like the new Borough shirt?
I like the new Borough shirt. I'm not too sure about the band, but I do like the new Borough shirt, yeah.
Okay. Who will win the Championship next year?
Leicester City.
Interesting. Who do you think will win the Premier League?
Man City.
Shock.
Yeah.
Do you think that Pochettino will still be there at the end of the season next year for Chelsea?
Yes, I do. I think he'll do a really good job. I think he'll revitalise and he will rebrand that football club. I think he's gone in there to do a job, and I think they'll stick by him and give him what he needs. One thing he'll get them really fit, and I don't think they've been fit for years. By the way, I think he'll get them bang on this year.
Do you think Mbappe, because he's demanding €240 million euros a year, will end up going to Saudi Arabia?
If people are looking for money, then yes, because no one else can afford that kind of money. It's crazy money, and players like him can demand it. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depends how you look at it.
Be a shame if he was to leave in his prime to go.
If he left without coming to the Premier League and part of his football journey, I'd be distraught.
Yeah. Name 4 teams that will make the playoffs next year.
I'm going to upset a lot of people here. I'm going to go. I'm going to go Sunderland.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go Southampton. I'm going to go Blackburn. I'm gonna throw a swerve ball, and I'm gonna go Sheffield Wednesday.
Interesting. Who's a worse manager, Steven Gerrard or Frank Lampard?
Well, I played with them both, so I'd probably say me. No, I'm going on facts, by the way. So everything I talk normally is either my own opinion or facts. I'm going on facts, and the facts do state that Frank is probably the worst manager.
We've got to have a question in there to stitch you up a little bit, innit? Okay, last one. Last two, sorry, I can't count. Will Cardiff City be in a relegation battle again next year?
No, 100% no.
You're brave. You're brave.
I did say sometimes that's my opinion. That's an opinion, not a fact.
Yeah, of course, yeah. And then the final question is, are you free on Monday nights? No, I'm not joking. I'm only joking. Let's have a look. No, I think that's a nice way to finish it. Magnificent 7. Roll back the years, mates. It's been a pleasure. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's been nice.
And still got that professional touch to finish bang on 1.5 hours. Like, just never lose it.
It's just standard, isn't it? Standard. We got good at that. We didn't need to check the watch or it's been good.
Well, we had that little it was the any other business, Magnificent 7. Tell me why. Boom, boom, boom. Player's career. Questions from the live chat. Rock and roll. It was beautiful, mate. It was beautiful. Guys, I'm sure we'll see Andy again at some point. And I'll obviously let you know. We got plenty of shows coming up though. Wednesday, members, the Cardiff City Stroke Championship. Thursday, the weekly footy roundup while Rodri's having a little break. And we've got My Story this coming Monday, featuring none other than former Cardiff City striker, former Lincoln striker, Mr. Gavin Gordon. And that was a really interesting chat. That's out Saturday at 12 o'clock. And I also would urge you to check out last week's with boxer Brandon Scott, because that was a real interesting special show. But until then, Andy, it's been a pleasure, mate. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks for everybody listening. Really appreciate it.
Top man. And we'll see you Wednesday, guys. Nice one.
My mummy and daddy have been talking about life insurance. It sounds like something to protect my brother and me, but I don't really understand. Then my Auntie Louise told Mummy about Bespoke Financial Teesside. She said they're a local company who helped her with her life insurance. Mummy got in touch, and because they're based locally, a man called Darren was able to come to our house. He was really friendly. Darren stayed for a cup of tea and made it all really easy to understand. He said that life insurance will protect our home and family if anything bad were to happen. Like if Mummy or Daddy got sick, then we'd get enough money to take care of us, and our house would be paid for so it wouldn't get taken away. After an hour, Darren said goodbye and Mummy and Daddy seemed a lot happier. Once it was all sorted, we could all relax and watch a film together as a family. I don't know why they didn't do it sooner.
I belong to you.
I belong to you.
You do just what you want.